I'm Aileen Mercer. My family once praised me at the dinner table, then secretly drained my savings, forged debts under my name, and tried to ruin my life when I fought back. I thought blood meant loyalty, but I learned some wounds come from the people you love the most. Why would a family betray one of their own so deeply? Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening to this and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear from you. Also, have you ever been hurt by the people you trusted the most? Let's talk about it. The late afternoon sun draped the Mercer house in a sticky warmth, the kind that clung to your skin and made the air feel heavier. I stood by the kitchen doorway, listening to the laughter spilling from the dining room. Mom was setting the table with our best china, plates that hadn't seen the light of day since Marjorie aced her SATs. You know, this is a big deal, Dad said, folding a white napkin into a perfect triangle. Our Marjorie, heading to Stanford Law. Full ride, too. I lingered unseen, the uninvited guest at my own family's celebration. No one mentioned my acceptance to the University of Texas last year. No scholarships, no applause. Marjorie floated into the room, her golden hair catching the light like a halo. She kissed Mom's cheek and laughed when Dad ruffled her hair. I smiled, tight-lipped. It wasn't jealousy, it was something heavier, like carrying a backpack filled with stones only I could feel. Dinner was a pageant in her honor. Toasts were made, jokes told. Every time I opened my mouth, it seemed the conversation skidded into another direction. At some point, Marjorie mentioned wanting to study abroad for a semester. "We'll cover it, sweetheart," Mom said quickly, voice thick with pride. I blinked. I had worked 2 jobs to pay for my courses, barely scraping by on ramen and expired coffee. But Marjorie? She simply dreamed, and it materialized. Later that night, I wandered into the study to clean up a stack of old magazines Mom had been pestering me about for weeks. Underneath the pile, something white caught my eye. A sealed envelope tucked awkwardly between a dog-eared Vogue and an alumni newsletter. My name was scrawled across it in unfamiliar handwriting. I slid a finger under the flap and pulled out a crisp letterhead, Everstone and Company. Request for interview. The breath knocked out of me. I had applied months ago, secretly daring to hope for more. A foot in the door of a company that didn't care about family legacy, only merit. And here it was, months old, forgotten or hidden. I stumbled back, sinking into Dad's cracked leather chair. The world blurred at the edges. Why hadn't I received this? How long had it been here, gathering dust? The thud of footsteps startled me. I shoved the letter under my sweater, heart hammering. Marjorie's voice floated down the hallway. "Mom, have you seen my heels? The nude ones?" Mom's answer was muffled, but there was a tightness to it that made my stomach twist. I wanted to storm into the dining room, letter held high like a torch, demand answers, demand apologies. But the old gnawing voice inside whispered, "Don't make a scene, don't be the problem." I stayed frozen, fingers digging into the armrests until the leather groaned. 16 years ago, I had forgotten my birthday. My own family had remembered 2 days later when the grocery store called about an unclaimed cake. Mom said it with a laugh. We were just so busy with Marjorie's spelling bee. Old hurts stitched themselves neatly into this new betrayal. I swallowed them down like bitter medicine. I slid the letter deeper into my bag, feeling its weight against my ribs. It was proof that they had erased me once, twice, 100 times. No more. As I stood up, the overhead light caught in the window, throwing my reflection back at me. A woman invisible even in her own home. I smiled at that woman, a thin, grim line. "You see me," I whispered, and for the first time I believed it. The letter weighed heavily in my bag as I crept back upstairs. The house had grown quieter, blanketed by the muted hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. Something itched at the back of my mind, a scratch I couldn't reach. I pulled open the drawers in my room, digging through old bills, insurance paperwork, and forgotten bank statements. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, only that I needed to find it. Mom had hidden one letter. What else had she hidden? Near the bottom of a dusty file folder wedged between a stack of outdated utility bills, I found a printed email confirmation from Everstone and Company. The timestamp was 3 months ago. It confirmed an interview schedule, and then a second email, a cancellation. Thank you for the opportunity, but I must respectfully decline. The signature at the bottom was mine, or at least it was supposed to be. My breath caught. I stared at the screen, blinking rapidly as if it might change. The words twisted themselves into a mockery of my voice, all neatly typed, polite, and final. I hadn't written this. The realization crashed over me with brutal force. My mother had impersonated me. She hadn't just hidden the opportunity, she had destroyed it. The room seemed to tilt. I sat heavily on the bed, fingers trembling. Had she picked up my phone when I wasn't looking? Used my email while I was working double shifts just to keep gas in my car? 16 years ago, I had missed a shot at a summer internship because Mom had forgotten to mail my application. She laughed it off. You wouldn't have liked it anyway, honey. I clutched the crumpled email to my chest, a hollow ache blooming behind my ribs. Gripping my laptop, I opened a new tab and logged into my credit report account, something I hadn't checked in months. Independence was looming, and if I had any hope of surviving on my own, I needed to know where I stood. The page loaded slowly, each second stretching like smoke across a burning field. And then, there it was, a $42,000 personal loan active, taken out nearly a year ago, under my name. The room shrank, my vision blurred. I frantically clicked through the details, lender information, disbursement dates, payment history. I hadn't borrowed a cent. My heart jackhammered against my ribs. The email, the hidden interview, the loan. It wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern, a system, a quiet theft, years in the making. I stumbled to the mirror, catching sight of myself, pale, wide-eyed, a stranger in my own reflection. Betrayal wrapped itself around me like a second skin. Back on my bed, the loan statement in hand, I pieced it together. My family had made me a puppet, pulling the strings to their convenience, keeping me dependent, trapped, invisible. Somewhere downstairs, Marjorie's laughter floated upward, light and careless. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not tonight. This time, I whispered to my reflection, voice steady despite the crack in my chest. I won't forgive. The words tasted foreign on my tongue, but true. The first thread between us snapped. The front yard was a mess of pastel streamers and folding chairs. Balloons bobbed lazily in the humid Austin breeze, their colors bleeding against the faded white porch railings. Inside, the house buzzed with chatter and music, a celebration in full swing, for Marjorie. I stood near the kitchen island, clutching a flimsy plastic cup of lemonade, ignored like an afterthought. Marjorie's face beamed from a life-sized poster taped to the living room wall. Congratulations, Marjorie. We're so proud. I counted 4 different cakes, all her favorites. No one even asked what I was doing now. No one cared. I drifted through the throng of relatives weaving between old family friends and Marjorie's smug college buddies. Their smiles were all for her. I was the invisible sister, the necessary background noise. From the corner of the den, I caught a snatch of conversation. Uncle Don's voice, low and conspiratorial. It's a good thing Marjorie's future's bright. Otherwise, they'd have had no way to secure that second mortgage without creative solutions. My skin prickled. I edged closer, pretending to fiddle with my phone. Aileen's credit was a godsend, Aunt Patty chimed in, laughter tinkling like ice cubes. They'll never tell her, of course. She'd never understand sacrifice. I turned to stone. The $42,000 loan. It wasn't just theft. It was a leash. They'd shackled me to the house, tethered my future to bricks and drywall I didn't even own. The walls seemed to close in, the air too thick to breathe. 16 years ago, I had watched Dad sign loan papers after Grandpa's stroke, heard the adults murmur about doing what's best for the family. Back then, I believed them, trusted them. Now, the truth tasted like ash. I stumbled outside, needing air, needing distance. The garden overflowed with laughing guests, raising plastic glasses and toasts. Every speech, every cheer was for Marjorie, her new job, her bright future, her endless possibilities. No one mentioned the sister who had worked 2 jobs to pay the electric bill when Dad's hours were cut. No one spoke my name. I sat on the back steps, the din of celebration muted behind me. Somewhere deep inside, something cracked, subtle and irreversible. Marjorie's voice rang out, clear and bright, thanking everyone for believing in her. I pressed my palms against my thighs, digging nails into denim to keep from trembling. When Mom called for a family photo, I rose stiffly, forced a smile. Let them herd me into the frame like a stray dog they couldn't quite keep out. The camera flashed. In that split second, as I stood between my beaming parents and my radiant sister, I made a silent vow. This is the last time I let them bury me alive. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee. I sat across from my parents at the dining table, the laminated wood surface sticky under my palms. Marjorie, lounging nearby with her phone, barely glanced up. Mom cleared her throat, her voice syrupy sweet. Aileen, honey, about the party expenses. Dad coughed into his fist. It would mean a lot to the family if you could help out. Translation: pay for it. I stared at the chipped rim of my coffee mug, feeling the familiar prickle of resentment. They framed it like a favor, like love, but I knew it for what it was, another extraction. It's just, you have a good job now, Mom continued, squeezing my hand as if affection could disguise manipulation. You want Marjorie's day to be perfect, don't you? My lips parted, but no words came out. Every rational protest tangled into silence, smothered under years of conditioning. I nodded once, mechanically. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, a growing storm brewing inside me. The Everstone and Company letter was crumpled under my mattress, a secret burning against my back. The next morning, Mom cornered me before breakfast. She didn't waste time with sweetness. We've been talking, she said briskly. You need to reconsider that New York job. Stay here. Help the family get back on their feet. Her tone sharpened. It's the right thing to do, Aileen. Blood comes first. Always. My stomach twisted. Blood. As if that word was a chain she could yank. You'd abandon your family for a paycheck? She hissed when I hesitated. In that moment, something fragile inside me cracked wide open. I pictured the sacrifices they demanded, not asked for, demanded, my dreams for theirs, my future shackled to their mistakes. I smiled thinly, a gesture with no real warmth. Let me think about it, I lied. Upstairs, I pulled out my laptop, heart thudding. I opened a draft email. Subject: resignation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't send it. Instead, I sat there, staring into the darkened screen, the reflection of my own tired eyes glaring back at me. They'll have to drag me down quickly, I whispered into the thick summer night, a vow sharper than any signature. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged to myself again. 2 weeks had turned the summer heat into a slow, unbearable chokehold. I came home one evening to find my parents waiting for me in the living room, the air inside thicker than the August air outside. Dad crossed his arms, a legal-sized envelope sitting smugly on the coffee table. Mom's lips were pressed into a line so tight it could have cut glass. You're leaving us no choice, Aileen, she said, voice trembling not from sadness, but from rage barely contained. If you continue to abandon your responsibilities, we'll have to take legal action. Legal action. The words snapped in my ears like an electric shock. For neglecting your filial duty, Dad added, like he was reading from a prepared statement. My throat dried instantly. I stared at them, feeling like a stranger in my own home. In their eyes, I wasn't a daughter. I was a wallet, a liability they could threaten into submission. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I just left. Upstairs, I yanked open the old file cabinet tucked in my closet, searching for anything I could use to defend myself. I flipped through yellowing papers until a familiar envelope slipped free. Grandma's handwriting. my name looping across it, innocent and sure. Inside was the bank paperwork for the savings account she had opened for me when I was 5. It had been my secret treasure chest, something she promised would help me one day chase my dreams. I clutched the statements in trembling hands, flipping through them. Year after year, small deposits carefully recorded, until one abrupt, silent withdrawal. Everything gone. Years ago. I sank onto the floor, the carpet scratching my knees. 16 years ago, Grandma had died. That same year, the account was emptied. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. They had stolen from a child. No desperate mistake, no act of necessity. It was a cold, calculated decision. I had been a piggy bank to them, cracked open and spent without a second thought. Tears blurred the ink on the papers, but I didn't wipe them away. I needed to feel every sting, every raw edge of it. They never thought I'd look. They never thought I'd fight. They counted on my silence as much as they counted the stolen dollars. I dropped the papers onto my bed, my hands curling into fists so tight my nails bit into my palms. If blood meant nothing to them, then blood owed them nothing. At midnight, I stood by the window, the city lights painting thin silver scars across the dark sky. On my laptop, a blank document glowed. Subject, response to legal threat. I began typing. My fingers moved without hesitation. No apologies, no compromises, just a declaration. If they wanted a war, they had already lost it the moment they mistook my silence for weakness. The gossip seeped into my life like smoke under a door. At first, it was subtle, a neighbor's polite but cold smile, an old high school teacher no longer waving back. Then it grew teeth. Such a shame, I overheard at the grocery store, after everything her family did for her. A former friend texted me one morning, blunt and accusing. "Is it true you're abandoning your parents?" I sat on my bed, staring at the screen, numbness coating my skin like frostbite. They were painting me as a monster. And in a town like ours, reputation was currency. By late afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, vague, judgmental messages that tightened the noose around my chest. At first, humiliation threatened to break me. Then anger burned hotter, sharpening me. I closed my eyes and made a call. A week later, I sat across from a woman whose handshake was firm, her eyes sharper than any blade my parents could wield. Jessica Liu, family law specialist. I laid it all out. The stolen savings, the fraudulent loan, the concealed job offer, the threats. Evidence poured across her desk in neat stacks. Bank statements, emails, loan documents. Years of betrayal reduced to black ink on white paper. Jessica leaned back, arms folded. "They've been running a racket under your name for years." She didn't sugarcoat it. I respected that. "We'll contest their claims," she said, tapping the file with a manicured nail. "And we'll file countersuits for fraud, financial abuse, and emotional distress. You have a solid case." Hope flickered, small and cautious. Not salvation. I wasn't naive, but maybe a way out of the storm. We got to work. Forms were signed, affidavits drafted, evidence cataloged meticulously, every forged document, every hidden transaction. For once, I wasn't scrambling to defend myself. I was choosing the battlefield. 2 weeks later, Jessica placed the final motion before me. "Ready to file?" she asked. My hand didn't even shake. I signed. The shift was immediate, internal, like unshackling invisible chains one by one. I wasn't prey anymore. That night, I stared at the official legal notice, freshly printed and ready to be served. The house was silent, heavy with the tension of 1,000 unsaid things. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter, right where my mother left threatening notes about chores when I was 12. "You made me a fighter," I whispered into the stale air. Outside, a dry wind swept through the oak trees, rattling the branches like bones. There was no turning back now. The invitation came wrapped in sweetness. "Let's have a family dinner," Mom had said, voice thick with manufactured warmth. It's time we talked things out. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The house smelled of roasted chicken and desperation, Smiles stretched too tight. Forks clattered against plates in jittery rhythm. Even Marjorie, who usually commanded the room with loud, self-satisfied chatter, was oddly restrained. I knew before the salad was served that something was wrong. During dessert, the knives came out, figuratively, but just as lethal. Marjorie set down her fork with a delicate clink, dabbing at her mouth like a judge about to deliver a death sentence. "You know," she began, tone syrupy, "it's sad what success does to some people, makes them forget where they came from." My stomach clenched. I placed my spoon down carefully, watching the trap unfold. "You think you're better than us now," she continued, her voice rising, "because you have a fancy lawyer and a shiny job offer. But you're nothing without family, Aileen. Nothing." The others nodded solemnly, as if rehearsed. "You're tearing this family apart," Mom added, tears conveniently pooling in her eyes. "After everything we sacrificed for you." I felt each word like a slap. Not because they wounded, those scars were old, but because they confirmed what I'd already suspected. There was no saving this. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted submission. I inhaled slowly, forcing the rising tide of fury back into its cage. When I spoke, my voice was calm, almost gentle. "It's amazing," I said, "how you can rewrite history without blinking." Marjorie slammed her palm against the table. Glasses rattled. Dad muttered under his breath, "Ungrateful brat." I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back with a controlled scrape. The room held its breath. From my bag, I pulled out a simple white business card, laid it flat in the center of the table, face up. Jessica Liu, attorney at law, printed in crisp black letters. "You'll be hearing from me," I said softly. "But next time, it won't be over dinner." Their faces shifted. Anger, shock, fear, all delicious in their rawness. I didn't wait for their reaction. I turned on my heel, walked out into the heavy night air, and let the door close behind me without a glance back. The humid darkness wrapped around me, but it felt cleaner than the air inside that house. War had been declared, but for the first time, the battlefield was mine. The envelope was thick, official, and ice cold in my hands. Inside, legal accusations spelled out a desperate attempt to paint me as a fraud. Reading their claims, my jaw tightened. It wasn't just the lies. They had twisted the truth so viciously it barely resembled reality. "They're betting on your silence," Jessica said, sliding another stack of evidence toward me across the polished surface of her office desk. "Let's show them how wrong they are." 3 weeks later, the courthouse doors loomed before me, heavy and unmoving, like the past I was about to pry open. The courtroom was sterile, almost indifferent. My parents sat stiffly on the other side, Marjorie's eyes burning holes through me, daring me to flinch. I didn't. Jessica opened with precision, each document and timeline unfurling like a blade. Bank statements showing secret accounts. Signed scholarship disbursements rerouted without consent. Loans opened under my name, disguised through falsified signatures. Their lawyer tried to object, but the judge's raised eyebrow said enough. The final nail was a set of recordings, casual conversations between my parents and Marjorie, bragging about how I'd never find out, because she's too naive to notice. The silence that followed cracked the courtroom wide open. When the judge called recess, I stepped outside, the Texas sun catching in the strands of my hair, a strange lightness threading through my chest. News spread faster than wildfire. Former friends of the family crossed the street to avoid them. Pastor Will from our childhood church sent a terse public statement about regrettable behavior unbecoming of our community values. It didn't erase the years they'd stolen. It didn't mend the deep lacerations they left in places no one else could see. But it stitched something else into me, something resilient. Walking past a bulletin board plastered with upcoming town events, I overheard a whisper from a group of women at the cafe next door. "That girl, Aileen Mercer, she fought back. Good for her. Good for her." The words lodged in my ribs like a seed finally finding dirt after years of drought. Outside the courthouse, I paused at the top of the steps, the city humming around me, leaves beginning to turn gold and crimson under the breath of early autumn. I inhaled the crisp air, feeling it scrape clean the last residue of guilt clinging to my skin. I didn't just win. I reclaimed myself, and this time, no one was ever going to take me from me again. The house smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. A modest two-bedroom tucked away at the edge of a quiet street in North Austin, with a creaky porch swing and enough sunlight to make even the walls feel forgiving. I traced my fingers along the windowsill, the wood still cool from the morning air. Boxes were stacked neatly by the door. My daughter's laughter rang out from the backyard, free and unburdened. I smiled, adjusting the picture frame of just the two of us. No family portraits here, no shadows lingering from a life I had finally set aflame. At night, when the world grew still, fragments of the past clawed at the edges of my peace. I would sit by the small kitchen table, nursing a cup of chamomile tea, and wonder if any of it could have been different, if I had been louder, if they had been kinder, if blood had truly meant something more. But wondering was a chain I refused to wear anymore. One chilly evening, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name, scrawled in Marjorie's familiar looping script. I sat staring at it, the weight of unopened wounds heavier than the paper itself. When I finally unfolded it, the words inside made my breath catch. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe you were right to walk away. I don't know anymore. No apology, no request for forgiveness, just a confession of confusion, a ghost of regret barely tangible. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the pocket of my cardigan. It didn't burn hot with betrayal. It didn't ache with false promises. It simply existed. Later that night, under a sky smeared with cold stars, I lit a fire in the backyard pit. One by one, I fed the past into the flames, court papers, old photographs, and finally, Marjorie's letter. The paper curled in on itself, turning black at the edges before disintegrating completely. I watched until the last ember floated upward like a tiny, dying star. Then I turned, the gravel crunching beneath my boots, and walked back inside where my daughter was giggling over a messy board game. The warmth of the room wrapped around me. I hung up my coat and bent down to kiss her forehead, inhaling the scent of bubblegum shampoo and the comfort of a life finally my own. As the last ember died, I whispered into the night, I'm finally free. Yet somewhere deep down, I knew the story wasn't truly over. Fanquoy. If there's one thing my journey taught me, it's that blood doesn't entitle anyone to your loyalty. Only love, respect, and trust earn that place. Walking away from my family was not about revenge. It was about survival, about choosing peace over a cycle of hurt. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most will be the ones who hold you back the hardest. If you're facing betrayal or injustice, know this. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to build a new life, even if it means burning bridges that were never meant to carry you. Healing isn't about waiting for an apology. It's about deciding you deserve better, whether that apology ever comes or not. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to make a tough choice for your own peace, even when it hurt? What helped you stay strong? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear today. And if this story touched your heart, please comment 1 below or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't connect with you, I'm truly curious. Tell me why and where you found this video. Let's keep this conversation real and open. Don't forget, if you want more powerful, true-to-life stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Your journey matters. Your voice matters. Let's walk forward together.